All right, today we're going to unpack a really complex and, frankly, controversial theory about the hidden origins of Western civilization. We're distilling this from an interview with author David Livingstone, and it's a theory that tries to connect the dots between ancient Babylon and, believe it or not, modern geopolitics.
So, if you ask a historian, where does all this esoteric stuff, the occult, secret societies, all of that actually come from? Well, you won't get a straight answer. It's a genuine puzzle. The trail seems to go cold in a dozen different places at once, leaving us with this really fragmented picture of the past.
The standard view is that these traditions kind of bubbled up independently. You've got Neoplatonism popping up in Greece, Hermeticism out of Egypt, Zoroastrianism from Persia, plus all those ancient mystery cults. They all feel connected for sure, but scholars have a tough time finding that one single thread that ties them all together.
But what if there was one key, one single moment in history that could unlock the whole thing and connect all those scattered dots? Well, the source material we're digging into today argues for exactly that, one explosive origin point for the entire Western occult tradition.
Okay, let's get into it. The entire foundation of this theory rests on a very specific reading of a single verse from the Quran. The claim is that this one verse holds the key to a hidden history that's been right under our noses the whole time.
Now here's where it gets interesting. According to the source's interpretation of this verse, the magic and sorcery being talked about had nothing to do with King Solomon. Instead, it was taught by what it calls the shaitan, a term it translates as Satanists, in a very specific place and time, ancient Babylon.
And the theory gets even more specific. It pinpoints this event to the 6th century BC. Now for context, this is the time of the Babylonian captivity, a period when the Jewish people were exiled and living in Babylon, which was basically the cultural and intellectual center of the world back then.
Now the source makes a really crucial distinction here, and this is important. It argues this verse is not a critique of the Jewish people as a whole. No, it says it's about a very specific, smaller group, an apostate segment, who turned their backs on their faith to learn magic from the Satanists in Babylon, essentially selling their souls.
So here's the big question. How could one small event in Babylon possibly end up shaping the entire history of Western thought? Well, the theory proposes that this apostate group didn't just learn magic. They forged a powerful and entirely new occult tradition. To get this next part, we have to understand who the source means by the Magi. Now, you're probably thinking of the traditional priests of Persia, but that's not it. In this theory, the Magi were a heretical subcult, basically devil worshippers who had been kicked out of the mainstream Zoroastrian religion.
So, according to this theory, you have this perfect storm in 6th century BC Babylon. You've got ancient Babylonian magic, you've got the beliefs of this heretical Magi cult, and you've got this brand new cutting-edge predictive astrology. The theory argues that the apostate Jewish group took all three of these, mixed them together, and created a new mystical system, what the source calls the original Kabbalah.
And here's where the theory makes its next giant leap. This new tradition didn't just stay in Babylon. It supposedly traveled west and became the secret, hidden foundation for pretty much all of what we now call Greek philosophy. A huge claim.
And here's the alleged breadcrumb trail. This Magi tradition makes its way to Greece. It merges with the local cult of Dionysus, creating this new thing called Orphism. The philosopher Pythagoras becomes its biggest promoter. And then Plato comes along, organizes it all into a coherent system, and becomes, in the words of the source, the godfather of Kabbalistic history. But the story doesn't end in ancient Greece, not by a long shot. The theory claims this occult tradition simply went underground, where it was kept alive and passed down through a chain of powerful secret societies that would eventually turn the world upside down.
And this timeline supposedly traces that secret lineage. It starts with the Knights Templar in the 1100s, moved to the Rosicrucians in the 1600s, and then to the Freemasons in the 1700s. And then, get this, the source claims the American and French revolutions weren't just about politics. They were the first major public victories for this underground movement that had been working in the shadows for centuries.
So what's the end game? What's the point of it all? Well, according to the source, the whole project is designed to rewrite history as a story of growing secularism. But that secularism, he says, is just a cover for the core occult idea that man is God and that we don't need divine authority anymore. Okay, so let's fast forward and bring this whole thing into the modern era. Because the theory claims this ancient historical thread connects directly to the formation of modern Jewish identity itself.
A huge turning point, according to this theory, was something called the Sabbatean movement back in the 17th century. It was led by a guy named Shabbatai Zvi, who claimed to be the Messiah. The source alleges that he managed to convince almost half the world's Jewish population, bringing this occult Kabbalah into the mainstream, right before he shocked everyone by converting to Islam.
And the source argues that the chaos from that event created a fundamental split in Judaism. On one side, you have traditional religious Orthodox Judaism. But on the other, a new path emerges, one influenced by this occult tradition. This path leads to a more secular, ethnic identity, and gives rise to modern movements like Reform Judaism and political Zionism.
So the bottom line of this entire theory is this: that same occult force that supposedly started in Babylon, well, it never actually went away. It just changed its clothes. It became secularized, it infiltrated mainstream culture, and, according to the source, it's now a major player driving modern geopolitics.
And that leaves us with the one big, final question this whole theory poses. When we look back at history, are we just seeing the messy, chaotic story of human progress and reason? Or could we be watching the slow, methodical unfolding of an ancient, hidden plan? It's a pretty provocative thought to leave you with.